It has been a few weeks since I finished chapter 2 and I have not properly gotten stuck into chapter 3. Life continues to get in the way. And once again, I'm at that place where I'm like, I have to write. So because I had such a great time last time, I'm going to do another writing sprint. This time I want to do start to finish, research, outline, write in 6 writing sessions. Have I lost my mind? Perhaps. Is it very likely that this will go terribly wrong just like last time? Probably. Already I feel atrocious, but I got results last time and I'm looking for more results this time. Without further ado, welcome to writing sprint number 2. It is 8 minutes past 10 on Saturday. I am trying to get in the zone. I got home from work after 10 o'clock last night to find that the new cat had escaped out the window and was holed up in the snake pit under the house. So it was a bit of an ordeal. I have a book launch tonight to prepare for. So I'm feeling very stressed and just not prepared and not grounded, but that's okay. Like, that's to be expected. And I'm also jumping into a new chapter, which feels overwhelming when I don't really know what I'm going to say. I haven't really planned everything out properly. So my goal for today is just to start getting in the zone, start feeling it out, kind of get an understanding of what I'll be writing this week. And if I don't write a lot, that's okay, because I just have to figure out what I'm writing first, which is a bit different to the last writing sprint, because the last writing sprint I had already really clearly defined what I was writing and I'd already written 3,000 or 4,000 words. So this is different. I've written like a very small introduction just to kind of get the ball rolling. I'm probably going to delete it and write something else because I don't like it. The really interesting thing about this chapter is that it's called persona non grata, except for like the non is crossed out, so it's just persona grata. And it is very similar to the chapter from Idle Limerence. In that chapter, I talked about primarily Namjoon and BTS's persona, and how it acts as like a powerful proxy for an idol, and it's like the bridge between fans and famous people to facilitate parasocial interaction and idle limerence, unrequited single-sided love experience between a fan and a celebrity. So that's what I wrote about in Persona and Idle Limerence. It was a very intense chapter. For those of you who have read the book, you'll know that is like where everything kind of like really kicks off. It's very emotionally turbulent. Huge chapter. I want to say similar things in this chapter, but in a totally different context, in the context of icons. And I want it to be shorter, and I don't want it to be emotionally intense. And I also want to introduce Matty Healy and the 1975, but primarily Matty Healy, because I want to look at like one person's persona. And this is why it's a bit nerve-wracking, because this is someone new who I've never written about before. My comfort zone is BTS. Matty Healy is also someone who still follows me on Instagram. No idea why, but it just makes me feel strange about writing about him, because he is such like a normal bloke. So I'm like, what am I going to say? But like, I know what I want to say. There is a reason why I have chosen him for this exploration of persona, and why it's so important for iconicism, because all icons need a wonderful persona, because that's what we interact with. That's what we're experiencing. That's like one of the vessels for us experiencing an icon is the persona. Yeah, so how do I write about someone I've never written about before in a way that is meaningful and purposeful, demonstrates my points, and is really interesting to people who know who he is and who don't know who he is? So I currently have like a very basic chapter outline, because I find it really interesting that artists in general, and that I'm using Matty Healy as like the exemplar of this, sit at this intersection of being human in the world, and being an artist. So human, society, and artistry. They kind of are a synthesis of all of these things, and many more. So I've broken the chapter so far down into human, society, and artistry, and I've kind of put my basic idea dot points there. But I have a feeling one of my first steps actually needs to be like doing more research and reading around persona, and seeing how that fits into this structure, what different elements of persona I want to explore and talk about. Overall, I'm hoping for a short chapter. like even 5,000 words, I would be happy. Like half the size of the other chapters. That'd be fine. Why is someone doing yard work? It's 10 o'clock on a Saturday. I think that's my mum. Gonna focus on not being anxious and grounding myself and just setting really realistic expectations of my day-to-day and see how it unfolds. It's 20 past 11 and I spent most of my time hanging out with that snake until I scared it so much that it flung itself from the veranda. And then I got caught up making my Google Scholar profile and I found some people who have like cited me. And I found this, which is a super interesting thesis.
Section 3.4.3.3.1.
That doesn't... anyway.
The court does not allow access for the blah 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 ball play.
Did you have to read all of this? As a part of this process of writing about Matty, it's really important that I tune into like who he is as a person, his craft, his experiences of the world, so I can properly like, and I know this is going to sound foofy, but so I can properly channel him through my writing. Because I want to give an accurate and sincere representation of who he is in a way that is intriguing and makes sense for the context of the book. So how do I get to know him on that level in a way that is part of my art, my process, so that I can properly channel him through my work? Last night was the launch of Becoming Wild, and a few things like happened in the lead up to the live stream, like that led to me having a complete panic attack, the worst I've ever had. I've never not been able to do a launch before, and then just today waking up and being like, what the fuck happened? How did I lose control? How did I let that happen? And just being very emotionally raw.
Yeah, okay, so you're saying just Roker. Yeah.
Day 3 of writing sprint, and I have not yet written anything. I got my period, and we all know how well that went last time. But this time it does seem a little better. So I'm going to sit here and try and write about Matty. Who is Matty? Who is Matty Healy? So I've been trying to figure out how I'm going to frame this exploration of Matty the human and give like context about who he is, how he thinks, what he's feeling. And I remembered this really cool interview with Carve, is that how you say his name? A filmmaker, where they both get high and just talk about stuff. And I found the interview really interesting because Matty came with like this need to get answers or guidance or some kind of help from Carve about negotiating this, the complexity of being human and being human in the spotlight and performing on stage to tens of thousands of people. And like, what do you do with that? How do you mediate this feeling? So I thought that was very interesting, considering the chapter is about persona and like how a persona is the public facing mask, right, or a role. And of course personas are so clearly visible when we look at performers, because they are literally using a persona to perform, and they can use multiple personas if they wish. And it's interesting that Matty is working within the rock star persona and taking the piss and not really liking it, while also being a fantastic rock star, but also being multiple other things at the same time. That's a lot for him to negotiate. So I thought, I'm going to use excerpts from this interview to kind of frame the exploration of Matty in his own words, which is always what I prefer, instead of firstly using someone else's words, or secondly like trying to make assumptions about someone. So I want his words to inform what I write about him. It's day 4 of writing sprint, and I think I'm getting sick. I just can't today. Like, what's the point of doing a fucking writing sprint when my body just won't cooperate? Like, why even try writing? I just want to give up. I feel very defeated by myself right now. Writing sprint day 5. I woke up no longer feeling sick, though I am really worried that I am coming down with something, but I can think straight today. I feel a lot better, and it's time to tackle the first part of this chapter. 5 days late. Though I have progressed, I'm at about 1,200 words overall. And if I'm going to 4,000 or 5,000 words, then that's okay, but like, I still don't really have a clear idea of where I'm going, despite having outlined everything. My current problem is that I want to introduce Matty Healy in this chapter, and I'm doing it in the structure of human, society, artistry. So we're in the human part, and in the society part we talk about persona, which is the whole point of the chapter. So the human part's meant to be like a small intro to Matty, to really get people to know who he is, and so I can get to the main point. And it can be really hard, obviously, to separate the persona from the human, especially when they're like an artist. And like, I want to talk about his artistry in the third part of this chapter, and I want to talk about his persona in the second part. So what do I talk about in the first part? And how do I build it all properly? Yeah, I think it's not going to be a writing sprint. I think it's going to be more of like, I don't know, like an 800-meter dash. I'm not familiar with running. I'm going to write right now. Okay? I definitely am getting sick. But I just wrote 183 words, and it took me like an hour and a half to write. So that's fucking sad, but it's great because I just had like many breakthroughs to get to that point, to understand what the angle is that I'm taking within this exploration of Matty, the human, which is very hard to do because you can't separate the human from the band that they have been in for 22 years or the art that they make, because that's all that they are, like that makes up a very large portion of who they are as a human, and a human that I can't exactly talk to find out more about. So like, that also makes up a large portion of the information that I have access to. And what even is the point of me saying all these words? And so anyway, I figured out what the point is. Progress. Yeah. I finally finished the first part of the chapter. I'm at where I wanted to be on day 1 or 2 of writing sprint. But oh well, that's life, right? Full of disappointments and setbacks, and ultimately when my book is released, no one will give a fuck how long it took me to write, and I definitely won't fucking care as long as people are reading it. So I did about like 370 words today. Yes, abysmal. I did it. I'm not making entire sense what I'm writing, but it's a good placeholder for all of my ideas, and it's good enough for me to be able to move on to the next part of the chapter and write the really important stuff that I want to write. You know, this is just all the setup. I do a lot of frickin' setting up in this book. Like 90% setup. It's out of my comfort zone. Writing about Matty is out of my comfort zone, and I have caught myself one too many times becoming too, like, you know that sensation when you become too self-aware? Like you're like singing along in the car or something and someone else is there and you're having a good time, but then you become like aware of what your face looks like and how you're sounding, and then you start picturing what your friend is thinking about you doing it and seeing yourself through their eyes. I just did that with my writing because fucking Matty still follows me on Instagram. Not that I want him to unfollow me, but it's just that thing of like, I'm writing, everything's going fine, and then my brain snaps into reading it from Matty's perspective, and that's very dangerous because firstly, I'm not him. Secondly, I shouldn't let that stop me from what I want to write. And third, it's just like, fucking fuck. But of course I want him to like it. Ugh. Life is complex and weird, but I have to just do the thing anyway. Because very high chance he'll never read it, so who cares? Today is the 4-year anniversary of Idle Limerence. My first book came out the 30th of March 2020. I don't know, do other people get upset or think about the anniversary of the release of their music or their art, or is it just me in this book? But it's just the intense feeling of sadness and disappointment and unrealized dreams. Day, 7 of writing sprint, and I'm still not writing. Instead I'm crying because I made the huge mistake of reading my reviews for Idle Limerence for the first time in a few years, and there's a lot more negative ones, and people commenting just to be mean, just for the sake of being mean, not actually being constructive, and just like people, obviously, like everyone's allowed to interpret the book however they like, but interpreting it in a way that I did not intend, which is always hard. And of course that's why you're not meant to look at reviews of your work, because people have a right to think whatever they want to think. I shouldn't be reading it, I shouldn't be letting it slow me down, but I've been crying for quite a while about it. So I'm gonna go out and eat some food, and I'm gonna try again tomorrow. It feels like I have moved through some really big emotional blockages today. I was in such a negative mind space when I filmed before, and that's how I went to sleep last night as well, just feeling a lot of grief and disappointment and just a lot of things, because this book is so tied up in my identity as an author, tied up in my chronic health journey, because it's what triggered a complete health crash, tied up in the breakdown of my long-term relationship, tied up in many years of suffering, so it's just this big ball of like, it's like many different coloured bits of yarn, and it's all balled up together, and I can't, pull out just the book one and be like, oh, look at that, because everything else is like stuck to it. It's all stuck together. So then on the anniversary, it kind of just goes, whoop, here's the thing. And I think I'm extra sensitive right now because I am in a new relationship, and I am writing a new book, and I'm a newer version of myself. So it's just intense. And then of course I made the mistake of looking at reviews and seeing that there's been a lot more since I last looked, and people intentionally went online to be mean, not critically analyze and discuss a book, but to be mean, to cause harm. So that sucked, but I'm not holding on to it too tightly, which I can very proudly say, because when I first brought out my book, anyone who said even a word that I could interpret as negative would seriously like skewer me through the heart. After having a long talk with Brendan, he helped me move through some stuff. Like, I was very resistant to what he was saying at the beginning of the conversation, and then yeah, it really helped. He really helped me just to be like, okay, that's everything. Yes, that all happened. That big ball is there, but it stops now. I acknowledge my feelings. I give space to them, but I don't need to carry this anymore. And I don't need to be in a situation where I allow my emotions to disable me. It is day 8 of writing sprint, aka writing marathon. It's Easter. I still feel like I'm getting sick. You can feel it in my throat. I've had a migraine every day for 6 days now. It's making it really hard to focus. But I'm going to try. Because if I don't write, the book doesn't get written. So I may as well try, and if it's still not working, then I'll stop. Today I want to define what a persona is, talk about how a persona is a response to society and also is shaped by society, and then through that talk about how an icon is someone who actively participates in this creation of persona, but also creation of society, how myths create personas. And I also want to do an exploration of Matty's stage persona, and like the controversy, the tension, the hatred that he receives, just like the juxtaposition between everything and the tension between everything. And essentially I want to say it's the repetition of the revered image that perpetuates the persona, which acts as a proxy of the human. It's 2:34, and surprisingly I have made progress. I have managed to do the first bit of the introduction for society where I explain what a persona is. Once again, this is a very big topic area. It's a very big subject to cover. So it's really hard just to be like, boop, this is what it is, knowing that like for some people it will be enough. For other people they won't understand it. That's really hard. So I've done that, and now I'm up to the next part where I want to further kind of like expand on persona by showing it in action with Matty, showing his persona, his stage persona, public perceptions, all of that kind of stuff. I just kind of got a bit hung up on this part because I want to make sure it's different from the part that comes after, which is where it talks about artistry. So that's the other part that I really struggle with in plotting things out, because all of these topics that I'm talking about are so interrelated that you can't talk about one thing without talking about another. But in order for me to build on my ideas and expand on them, I have to introduce them one at a time and to structure it a certain way to take the reader on a journey. The more I'm doing this work on the chapter, the more I can feel Matty, or whoever I'm constructing Matty to be in my creative brain. Getting used to that energy, that perspective. It's very different to what I'm used to working with. So I think it's going to be okay. It's just going to take longer than I would have liked, because I would have loved to have smashed this out in just a few days, but because it's Matty and it's new energy, it's new kind of like writing for me, is taking longer. But that's okay. It's all kind of falling into place right now, and I terribly wish that I could be in a situation where it's like I'm in a house by myself and I have like 3 weeks to fully get in this headspace and stay in this headspace to the point where it becomes like repetitive and meditative, but I cannot. Which is now why I'm realizing one of the many reasons why it takes people many years to write books. Never got it before, but now that my life is different, I'm writing a book in a different context about a different thing, it's like, holy shit, it's just going to take time. Which is funny because that's the one thing that I don't want it to take. But I guess that's my lesson in this, one of many. So yeah. I don't know, man. It feels like there was something else really important that I wanted to talk about. But I can't for the life of me remember, so maybe I will see you tomorrow.